What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be going over my new favorite shield tanking spec for Project Ascension, the Bulwark. Ever since Crimson Champion has come out, it has completely dominated the shield tanking archetype over on Area 52. I never felt like I could break away from it. It's always done the most threat, had the most survivability, but was so boring to play. So I went back into the lab and have done the testing, and I'm here to tell you that Bulwark is in fact the sleeper shield tank RE. With the tank changes coming soon and us all speculating on what it entails, I believe this has potential to be the new king of shield tanking specs. If you like these videos and want to support the channel, it only takes a few seconds, but subscribing below and leaving a like on the video will help get this video shared around to as many people as possible. Let's dive into the video. Let's start with the talent points and skills for this build. I will be doing something that I normally don't do. This will be broken into two sections. The first section will be the Mythic dungeon version of this build, which focuses more on AoE threat at the cost of utility spells like Blink, Disengage, etc, etc. Section 2 will be the main tank version of this build, which is designed purely for high-end raid tanking where AoE threat is less of a concern and survivability and threat is your primary goal. There will be a link to the online builder for both of these down in the description, so feel free to either follow along as I go over both sections or use the link below. Let's start by going over the AoE tank version of this build, built specifically for Mythics, and you could take this into normal flex dungeons as well, where AoE tanking during trash is a little bit more prevalent. We start here over in the Druid. We go Thorns, Barkskin, and over in Restoration, we take improved Barkskin for the extra 10% damage reduction there. Over in Hunter, the only thing we take is Deterrence in Survival for a little bit more cooldown based. Over in Mage, we take Molten Armor strictly for the extra damage dealt to monsters when they hit us for a little bit extra threat. Over in Paladin, we take Consecration, Righteous Fury, Divine Protection, and in the talents, we take Anticipation, Improved Righteous Fury, Ardent Defender, Holy Shield, Spiritual Attunement, Redoubt, and Hammer of the Righteous. Over in Retribution, we take the Retribution Aura, again for a little bit more Thorns effects to help maintain threat during AoE situations. The only thing we take over here in Priest is Dispersion. Over in the Rogue, we are still using Poisons. It's still the highest threat per second for single target, even over Wind Fury or other things, so go ahead and grab yourself Poisons. Over in the Combat Tree is where we take our first talent points here. We take 2 points into Weapon Expertise and actually 3 points into Vitality. The energy regeneration rate by 40% is critical for both this and the single target version of this build. Over in Warlock, we're taking Drain Soul. In Demonology, we have Summon Voidwalker, Demonic Embrace, Soul Link, and 5 points into Master Demonologist. Depending on the fight and instance you're in, you can unlearn Summon Voidwalker to get Summon Fell Hunter if magic damage taken is your main concern. Over in Warrior is where we spend most of our points. Starting in Arms, we take Heroic Strike, Charge, Thunderclap, and the 2 talents we take here are Unrelenting Assault. Over in the Fury Tree, we just grab Challenging Shout for that AoE taunt. Over in Protection, we get Defensive Stance, Taunt, Shield Block, Shield Wall, Revenge, and Shield Slam. For talents here, we take Shield Specialization, Improved Revenge, Shield Mastery, Firm Grip, Gag Order, Vigilance, Improved Defensive Stance, Critical Block, Damage Shield, and Sword and Board. You might notice we're not taking Shockwave or Devastate. Really, the reason being is because Devastate, while it does apply Sunder, which is good for physical DPSs in your group, it doesn't produce enough threat per second to be better than either Shield Slam, Hammer of the Righteous, or Revenge, considering Hammer of the Righteous also resets your Holy Shield stacks. It might feel a little weird at first not having any sort of Sunder or even Shattering Throw, but I promise it really doesn't make that much of a difference in Mythic dungeons. Let's go over the REs that I use for this version of the build. We of course are using Bulwark for our legendary. The 3 epic REs we use are Emanating Light, Crackling Thunder, and Baleful Hammer. The blue REs we use are Weapon Expertise, Redoubt, Precision, Critical Block, and the green RE we use is Taunting Shield Slam. The reason I'm using Redoubt in this version of the build is because in your downtime between having your Bulwark up, when all you have is your Holy Shield, being able to have Redoubt proc more will just increase your amount of block in between that downtime, increasing your overall survivability much more than any other RE would. Let's go over the other version of the build, which is primarily used for raid tanking and single target threat. The talent tree hasn't actually changed at all. The things that really have changed are the skills. We took out 10 ability essences from anything that was like a Thorns ability, so the ability Thorns, Molten Armor, or Retribution Aura, and redistributed those points elsewhere. We took 5 points and put them into Blink. Even as a tank, you need at least one mobility skill, and I believe Blink is the best, especially moving into higher tiers of rating. Over in Priest, we took Inner Fire, and in Shaman, we took Stone Skin Totem. The reason being is because these give per point the most armor, which leads to more physical mitigation. And the last ability essence we took was the Safe Fall over here in Rogues. Not very often in raids that you take fall damage, but the few fights you do, this actually does reduce the amount of damage you take in a fight. The REs look similar for this version of the build, but are a little bit different. We are still using Bulwark, Baleful Hammer, Precision, Weapon Expertise, and Critical Block, along with Taunting Shield Slam. The ones that have changed are we're using Blunt Force Trauma and Natural Disaster, and we changed the Redoubt REs into Shield Mastery. Even though we're not reducing the cooldown of Shield Block, gaining 15% additional threat on your Shield Slam is massive. Also, Blunt Force Trauma is probably the best single target threat that you can have, especially if you have 2 points into Damage Shield. And as far as any other REs, since we're not using Wind Fury or Devastate, Natural Disaster is our highest threat increase. I want to touch on the stat priorities and breakpoints you should reach for this build before moving into any kind of gameplay demos. The stat priorities for this build are as follows: Stamina, Strength, Block Value, Dodge, then Parry. Gem all your gear with the Strength/Stamina hybrids. Since this build focuses heavily on block value, you could value it over Strength for pure mitigation, but for overall performance, Strength increases threat and survivability more than just block value alone. Crucial breakpoints for this build that need to be met are the 8% hit cap and getting as close as you can to the 26 expertise cap as well. With lower levels of gear, it will be tough, but it will be more beneficial to sacrifice a few talent points and gear slots to reach those breakpoints. Here we are in game over at the Shattrath Tanking Dummies. I wanted to give you all a first-hand look at this build in action. I will explain a little on how energy manipulation works, how to time your Bulwark to get the highest possible uptime, and a general rotation for both single target and AoE situations. So this will be the unscripted part of the video, so I do apologize if it's not as concise as I normally am, but I will do my best to stay on track so you guys can understand exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to explain the single target rotation for the abilities, and you can use that in any of the builds. I'm going to showcase both of the single target and AoE rotations on the AoE version of this build because it's way easier to do it, because for the more main tank focused one, you can just take what I do here and translate it over and not have to worry about the other abilities. So specifically for single target, I look to maintain Holy Shield as much as I can, and usually I can keep 100% uptime by using Hammer the Righteous. So how I start the fight is I will use Holy Shield plus a minor cooldown and then charge in. At that point, I will use Bulwark. It will usually hit 2 to 3 times, and then I will do Hammer of the Righteous. Once my energy then reaches 100 again, I will use Bulwark. And at that point, all you're going to be doing is either Shield Slam into Bulwark, into Revenge, into Bulwark, or Hammer the Righteous into Bulwark. It's a little boring for single target, but basically all you're trying to do is maintain Holy Shield and use your cooldowns appropriately. So I'll show you what that looks like for single target specifically. Holy Shield, minor cooldown, charge in, Bulwark. Wait for 2 hits, and then Hammer the Righteous. And then I will wait for Bulwark to go up, wait for 2 hits, and then Revenge, and then Bulwark again. And basically I just repeat this process throughout the entire fight. Sometimes you can squeeze in a Shield Slam in there, sometimes you can squeeze in a Revenge, but most of the time, if you let your Bulwark hit twice, all you're going to have time for is doing one ability. You just want to maintain Holy Shield as much as you can. And that's basically the rotation. I have Heroic Strike macroed into my Revenge and Shield Slam, not my Hammer the Righteous, because sometimes you do run out of rage, but not very often. For AoEing in dungeons, I will show you what I do. So to start the fight, normally I do it the same way I do my single target rotation. I'll use Holy Shield, a minor cooldown, and then charge in. The one caveat is I cast Emanate before going in. If you guys haven't seen this, this is the new one that makes your concentration follow you. The biggest issue, and I don't know why this is a thing, but like proximity aggro just doesn't exist on Project Ascension. Normally, like when you would charge into a pack in any other version of the game, the monsters would hit you immediately. Not in this one, they just run right past your ass, but Emanate looks to fix that. So how I start the fight is I will do Holy Shield, Emanate, small cooldown, and charge in. I will then use Bulwark, and then look to either do Thunderclap or recast Emanate. The only thing that's kind of annoying about Bulwark for AoE situations, if you don't actually attack the monster first, you can't use any of your Shield Slam, Hammer of the Righteous, or Revenge. It's a weird bug. I don't even call it a bug, but basically all you're trying to do is maintain Bulwark as much as possible, cast Emanate and Thunderclap in between, and let your Thorns abilities plus your Bulwark hits take all the threat for you. The hardest thing about this build is timing your abilities in between Bulwark to be able to get the highest possible uptime on the RE. This comes down to knowing how energy regeneration works. You naturally regen a flat amount of energy every second, but you will still get those big bursts of energy like you saw back in the vanilla days. We take the energy talents in this build to help boost that flat amount per second, which allows for less downtime between GCDs for more mitigation throughout the fight. The other biggest gameplay element of this build is being able to know how many hits of your Bulwark has actually happened. I recommend having some sort of scrolling combat text add-on. I personally use MSBT for this because when you first start out, being able to physically see when your Bulwark does damage will help with this next point. A general guideline for this build is after casting Bulwark, you wait for 2 hits of your RE, then use one of your other abilities. The GCD will generally line up to where you can cast one other ability before your energy reaches 100 again. You can stretch this out to 3 or 4 hits of Bulwark if you want to try and proc your Sword and Board from your Revenge, or cast a defensive CD, but generally the best way to play this is 2 hits of your Bulwark, use one of your other abilities, and then repeat. One of the best things about this RE is that you aren't waiting around for stacks of your Crimson Champion anymore and deciding whether you want to Shield Slam or use Avenger Shield, and then sometimes wasting stacks on either of the abilities by accident. Also, Bulwark being off the GCD, you can use the defensive cooldown and Bulwark at the same time, allowing for some extremely high mitigation. So what did you guys think about this video? Has anyone out there tried Bulwark before and thought it wasn't that great? Trust me, I did too before putting the time into testing, but I am glad I did. And with that, this video is done. Subscribe below for more content if you haven't already. I will see you in the next one.